thanks everyone for joining us. I was saying before that we're going to be talking about gambles that we're taking on the farm. And although we're going to be covering quite a bit about what we're growing, crops that we're betting on for 2024, the way that Jordan and I think about gambles is actually more just gambles that we're taking as a business. So less so thinking about what we're doing as just purely flower farming, but running a business. And what that means is investing time and money in certain areas. And you're going to hear me and Jordan talk a little bit about just like really leaning into certain places and taking risks that I think a lot of second and third year people probably would not be taking, right? Especially if you're a little bit more conservative. So, with that all being said, it's March 10th. Jordan's had a really busy season already. So, Jordan, I'm going to turn it over to you. What have you been doing so far?
Yeah, so it is officially spring in Oklahoma. So it is probably about a month earlier than we would normally. Well, this is only my year too. So normal being compared to last year, it's about a month earlier. And we have already had, I would say, like 20% of our daffodils blooming. We have probably 35% of our tulips in bloom right now. So today I will be harvesting tulips all day long. I harvested 4 crates worth yesterday. We probably have another, I don't know, 12 to 20 more crates worth out there to harvest. So it has been busy. We have been doing florist sales for the last couple weeks. So that has been really good. And yeah, we've just been really busy on the farm. So one of the new things that we're doing this year is we are leaning into on-farm versus off-farm sales. So we're still doing a mix of both, but we put our greenhouse in and we did our first on-farm workshop yesterday. So that was very exciting. It went very well, but yeah, it's been busy here already.
Yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about that because obviously you didn't just throw a workshop together in a couple of days, right? This was very intentional. I think that one of the gambles that you took, right, was after having such a great experience at the farmers market last time when we
Mhm.
talked about, you realized that you really wanted more of that customer experience. So you started thinking about what does that on-farm experience look like? So you spent a lot of time updating your website, right? Like
Yes.
thinking about what on farm sessions look like. So you've had to invest in a greenhouse. Can you talk about just high level, like how far back that planning went and like what are all the things that you've had to really invest time and money in to make something like a workshop happen?
Yeah. So when we originally started the farm, I tend to be like very shy and introverted, which I think is usually surprising to people, but that is kind of like my natural state. So I always thought that we would be more of just wholesale. So when we bought our first property, I didn't buy it with necessarily like on farm in mind. So this actually goes really far back for us. So we ended up selling our other property once we realized that on farm was the direction that we wanted to go. I mean, that was a huge decision to sell an entire property and restart completely over at a new property.
Because you had already put a lot of stuff in the ground. I mean,
Yes,
you had
yeah.
dahlias, you had roses, you had some peonies, right?
Yes, yeah, we had a ton of stuff in the ground at the other farm, still in the ground at the other farm. We will be working on that in the coming weeks. But yeah, so this goes back really far. So once we did make that decision and we found a property that was like ideal for on-farm events, we kind of started putting our plan into action. And one of those plans was to get a greenhouse, and we wanted to make sure that we had like a really pretty greenhouse. So, I'm really fortunate that I have worked extremely hard at my day job and have a job that affords me the ability to make large investments into our farm and to get our farm off the ground. So one of the awesome things was is that I get an end of the year bonus, right? And so with that end of the year bonus, I was able to buy our Yotterbelt greenhouse and have that installed at the property. So we got that in December, and then once that was there, we started going into planning mode and started working towards, I think it was whenever we had that like huge winter blast, I spent that whole weekend like updating our website and getting it ready and planning our workshop. So we did a seed starting workshop. So we got all of that. It's like a separate scheduling tool that you use for things like that on your website. So I had to like get that, figure out how to integrate it in with your website and learn all of that. So we we did all of that. And then, I've spent the last few weeks working on like drafting a workbook for the course and marketing the course. So we originally opened just one date. It sold out fairly quickly. We can fit about 10 people in the greenhouse. So it sold out fairly quickly. So we opened up a second date. It sold really well. I opened up a third date, but I ended up pulling that third date back just because my husband really wants to go out of town that weekend. So I had like one student in that one. So we ended up selling 20. We sold out for our 2 dates. So 20 spots sold out. Had our first one yesterday. It just validated that that was the right, obviously, like there's been so many investments to lead up to that day, but it absolutely validated that it was the right decision for us on our farm. Um, it I think that it just you kind of have to think about like what works for you. And for me, like things that can fall on the weekend are much easier for me to incorporate into our farm versus things that happen during the week, like wholesale. So that is a big consideration for me. So being able to have that on the weekend where it's not conflicting with my day job, and that's just so much easier for me. But also just like I know that maybe we shouldn't make business decisions on feelings, but it does feel like it very much aligns with like me and my core values and being able to like, I really just have this desire to like teach people about flowers. So to be able to spend my morning like teaching students about flowers was amazing. It was a very large investment. I am hopeful that we will make that investment back. We are not just using it for workshops. So we've set up our calendar to where we'll use it for workshops probably once or twice a month on the weekends, but then we also have set up the booking calendar to where photographers can book our greenhouse and use it for photography sessions during the week. And then also I have it blocked off in our calendar so that from November through March, we'll be able to grow in it. And we have installed a mini spit and flooring and insulation and walls now in our greenhouse so that we're able to grow in it year round. So big
Yeah.
investment, but I think that it will pay off this year.
So this year, I mean, what people I don't think have heard Jordon talk about is behind every single decision that she makes, whether it's small or big, there's a spreadsheet behind it. And you guys think I have like detailed spreadsheets. Jordon takes it to a completely different level. So she has all of these like minute costs that she puts in there. Jordon, like, did your spreadsheet analysis show that with this Yoder built greenhouse that you can earn a return back on it this year?
I think that we'll be able to. It depends on how well the photography takes off. If that takes off, I think we'll absolutely be able to pay for it this year. Our on-farm workshops have, if you're just looking at like workshop costs, workshop supplies, and not taking into account like the greenhouse cost, they have about a 50% profit margin. So assuming, if you run the numbers on it, I do think that we would be able to pay it off this year, but I need to see how the photography goes.
Yeah.
So I'll start having a better idea on that, I think, in the coming weeks because now it's like ready and I can actually start like marketing the photography side. We've set up like a separate Instagram too for like the photography side where we're just like focusing on like following all the photographers that are local and trying to gain that following so that we can work with them.
Yeah, no, that is super super exciting. Guys in the chat, let us know if you have any questions. I know we kind of jumped right into the business part on an early Sunday, and I promise we'll get to the growing part of the gambles conversation. But I think one thing that's really important to highlight over here is I think Jordon and I, as we start getting really into the weeds with the numbers and understanding our margins, like when Jordon says that workshops are 50% margin, that's a really good margin. If you were to just rely on growing and selling your flowers, realistically, you're looking at like a 30-35% profit margin. That's considered really good. In fact, there are some who do more of like a volume based model, and we're talking about like a 10 to 20% margin. So that's why when you start shifting things like experiences and you can get to 50-60% margin, it's a really good way to balance out your business. And so I'll talk a little bit later about where I get to my 50% margin. It's obviously not on farm workshops the way that Jordon is doing it. But I think that the ability to recognize this and what parts of your flower farming business contribute to what percentage margin is really important as you scale your operation. Jordon, anything else to add to that?
So that's really all.
Awesome. So let's actually go back and talk
Mhm.
about the growing piece in terms of the risks that we're taking. So, what are you doing besides harvesting right now related to growing?
Yeah, so I think it feels like a big risk, though less of a risk now at this point because our weather it's gotten, I don't know if I've said that, it's gotten extremely warm in Oklahoma already. This is not typical for us. It's been like 70s and 80s already. That's like a month earlier than what it would normally be. But because of that, we would really like to have sunflowers for Mother's Day. And so we seeded for our sunflowers this week, and that does feel risky. It doesn't feel like a huge risk because, sunflowers are a low investment. So if it doesn't work out, that is absolutely okay. But if it does, it will be leaps and bounds worth it to have, 1,000 sunflowers on Mother's Day would be amazing.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like people are pushing the envelope with sunflowers as a whole.
I
Lisa
think so
Mason
too.
Ziegler has put out a couple of episodes on her podcasts about just this ability to like, or sunflowers being a lot more frost hardy than you would
Mhm.
think. And my personal experience is that when they self seed outside, they are a lot more frost tolerant than if you were to self sow them inside and then transplant them out. So, to the extent that you can actually, I guess, seed a few weeks earlier and even put cloth over them, you might be able to actually get earlier germination, and it
Mhm.
might still dip below 32 degrees as long as it's not like a killing frost. Those sunflowers should actually do okay. And
Yeah.
last year I had a bunch of volunteers that actually came up in early April, which is like way earlier than where I would seed sunflowers here in zone 7A in New Jersey.
But I think that's like such an interesting learning moment though, because now that you know that those came up in early April, then it's like, okay, well, that does mean that maybe I could seed them a little earlier. And I think we should be paying attention to those things because it's so awesome, like that we can do that. So I know that there's some places here in Oklahoma where sunflowers already have germinated naturally on their own, where they've dropped from the prior year, and knowing that. So like we don't show in our 10-day, we're not dropping below. And so I doubt that at this point we'll drop below 32 again. So we don't even have ours covered. We may cover them if we see it dipping below in the forecast, but I think Jesse and I talked about this yesterday. I think our biggest hurdle will be deer with them. So we'll have to figure out how to battle that once
Yeah.
they start
And
growing.
I'm actually going to sometime this week actually go out and run the earthway cedar because we're gonna get like 70 something degree weather, which honestly, like a day or two is not gonna be enough to warm the soil. I've also learned that you have to be careful with covering with cloth because you might also germinate a lot of weed seeds, or if they
Hmm.
are already germinated, you'll just facilitate their growth faster. But the reason why I have an investment in wanting to get sunflowers is because I'm back on the stock train. So, like, stock is just that one crop next to ranunculus that I want to get a really good crop out of and
Yeah.
see if I can do it well here. So, I have plugs coming in during the first week of April, and that's kind of like a little, it's not late for here, but it's also not early. And the risk with getting it a little bit later is that obviously it's going to get too hot. So my goal is to
Hmm.
use sunflowers to shade out the afternoon sun,
Oh.
and so then
Hmm.
the stock can get the morning sun. So I'm going to be trying to do a lot more interplanting in that
Hmm.
way this season to see if I can grow things that normally you wouldn't grow. Yeah, so we'll see how that
Yeah.
goes.
I'm gonna try to the same, similar, not the same. Our stock died. We lost it in that polar vortex, which fine.
Oh,
But we had just planted, and then it
oh,
came in like the next week, so there was nothing we could do about it. But I'm gonna try like pro cut sunflowers in with our sweet peas because there's space in the hole for them, and the sweet peas are going to grow up in theory. They're still super tiny, so I don't actually know because it's gotten so warm here, so I don't actually know. But we are going to try to do intercropping the sweet peas and the first round of sunflowers together in the high tunnel because I think we'll have a better chance of the sunflowers coming up and might as well use the space. And then we're also going to intercrop yarrow in with our daffodils
yes, that
so that
one
that daffodil
is.
bed's still going to be
I'm
used.
I'm really excited to hear how that one goes. I think that there's so much opportunity for intercropping. Like intercropping is going to play a really big role for me this year because I
Mhm.
have shrunk down my growing space, And like there are times where I'm like, I should just reopen up a row. And I'm like, no, like keep it the way it is and try to be more efficient with your space. So, on that topic, one of the things that I've been trialing and I finally have some results, I'm actually going to do a separate video on this. I've been trying to do a video, but it's been like raining cats and dogs outside. But I had lasagna planted my tulips on top of lily bulbs. And
Hmm.
this is like a 17-inch raised bed. And so I had thought about this early enough in the season where when I planted the lily bulbs, they were probably only about 8 inches out of the 17. So all I did was I dumped the tulip bulbs on there, like literally put in the crate, dumped it in. I did not like make it look really nice and just like egg carton style, dumped it in, and then put mulch on top,
Hmm.
and it was like a relatively thinner layer of mulch, and then I put leaves on top, and I'm getting tulips. I'm actually getting some
Yeah.
buds, and it's been really interesting because I didn't proactively put tulips in the ground, but I had some that I basically perennialized. They're triumphs, and I
Hmm.
just couldn't get to them last year after I had my daughter, and it was like a C-section, so I just like it was just too much for me, so I let them perennialize and they're starting to come up. So one potential learning for me is that of course raised beds that are off the ground are going to cool more quickly, but they're probably also going to warm more quickly. So I actually
Hmm.
wonder if that is helping contribute to me getting stems earlier, in addition to the fact that many of those bulbs were actually pre-chilled at 5C. So
Mm,
that's just
true.
like really exciting for me to see because I see buds where if we have some decent weather, I actually think I can get tulips blooming from the ground in like late March, which will hit Easter this year. So that's like that'd be
Exciting.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Jordan, there's actually a couple of questions for you in the chat. So I'm going to start with an easier one. Where in Oklahoma are you? She's in Shawnee.
Oh, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So our farm is in Sapulpa, but yeah, we live in Jinx, so we're in the suburbs of Tulsa.
Yep. And then someone else asked, can I ask what you do for your day job?
Yeah, so I do tax technology consulting. So I'm a senior manager at a Big Four accounting firm. So
Can
that's what I
I
do for my
just
day
talk
job.
about the implications of that on farming? Because the fact that Jordan is here and doing lives with me is a testament to her capacity for work. Like, I feel like I have a pretty high tolerance for work capacity, and Jordan is like on a different scale. Like, there are very few people in my life who I know like Jordan's energy levels. And the reason why I say this is because her job also requires her to travel. So I had to travel twice this month and I was just like moaning and like bitching about it. And Jordan
Yes,
literally does it like on like a regular
it's
basis and
been
she'll be
nice though. I
gone for
haven't
days.
lately. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gone 2 days this week, which it's like the first time in a while. But work is really starting to pick up right now. Like it's gonna be we're just very busy at work. So it's that's gonna be interesting because I think that work will probably be 50, 60 hour weeks for a while. Like right in the middle of like spring on the farm. So that will be interesting, but it just means, just gonna have to work extra hard and that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that for very beginner flower farmers who are doing this as a side hustle, like one of the things that I've come to realize is that like everyone has a busy job, right? Everyone's job can be stressful, but
Yeah.
there's another layer of complication when you're not fully remote and you have to go to the office, and then a much like more complicated layer once you start traveling because then you have like
Hmm.
very little control over harvesting and really
Hmm.
timing of things, especially if you don't have help with you, right? So even though Jordan, like your
Exactly.
family helps you, you're really still kind of like running the show, right? It's not like
Yeah.
you've got
So
like a
when it
equitable
comes
partner, right? Doing this.
No, when it comes to harvesting, that's usually always just me. I've already warned my husband, like, since I'm gonna go harvest today, this morning, after this, gonna go harvest again tonight because we're just in full-blown tulip season and that's how it is. But like, then I fly out at 6 in the morning for 2 days. So I've already warned my husband, like, you're gonna have to do a Monday night harvest and I'll probably have to go do a Tuesday night harvest once my flight lands. And that's just kind of how it is when you choose to do farming plus having a day job. Like it's just, and especially when you have a day job that's, I think, similar to ours, where it's not, it's a very strenuous, busy day jobs. very demanding. I think you just have to be willing to put in those extra hours. And I don't know, I've always loved working, so I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, so on a side note, Jordan was saying that her oldest daughter, I mean, she's like gonna be an adult basically soon, but she loves to work, just not on the flower farm. She has her own retail job. And I told Jordan, yeah, your daughter's normal. We're the crazy ones. Like, that's why there's not a lot
I
of people
know.
who go into flower farming, right? Because it's so much manual labor. And that's just one of the things to consider is that, like, you cannot pick a more manually heavy type of side job in addition to a
Yeah.
full-time job.
You know what was interesting though is when I was leading the workshop yesterday, like for my day job, my full-time job, I'm leading workshop sessions almost every day. And so my oldest daughter was like, "Aren't you nervous about the workshop?" And I was like, "Not in the slightest." Like I get to talk about flowers and lead a workshop for an hour and a half, and I lead, 8-hour long workshops for my day job talking about taxes, which so at least with this I'm getting to talk about flowers. Like so it was interesting though, I think how the two play into each other. Definitely strengths that I have for my day job translate over to the farm, but also interestingly enough, like the farm has been also very good for my day job and like client interactions because it gives you like a fun thing to talk about with your clients and they all love hearing about the flowers. So it's also I think the two play really well together. Except
Yeah.
for I'm exhausted all the time.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a comment in here that the sunflowers will grow like you anticipate. I've done this for 25 years. That is good validation. Joe the
Oh,
grower.
good.
He also has a YouTube channel, so check him out if you guys haven't yet. But I find that in some ways it's less about getting the sunflowers to grow and more around getting them to germinate before they're eaten by the birds here. So
Yeah.
yeah, just some stuff for us to figure out. But like sunflowers are, I feel, in a really safe spot in terms of risk reward for people to take that leap of faith on, because the worst thing that happens is you lose maybe like a couple of bucks on seeds, or not a couple of bucks for Jordan. For you, it's a lot more because you're doing thousands. But in the grand scheme, it's a very small
Still
cost
not a
for the
lot. Yeah.
payoff that you could get in return.
Yes, exactly. And just to kind of dive in a little on the growing side, I'm direct seeding with an earthway. Is that also what you're doing?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I
Yeah.
would. I thought about soil blocking and all that stuff, and so there's a reason why I don't soil block and do my own seeds. I've literally killed, like, I would say 65% of all my seedlings that I started back in
Same.
January. But in that process, I was actually calculating the amount of time that it took for me to like make the soil blocks, get all the
Mhm.
equipment out, seed individually. And it took a lot more time than I thought it would, mainly because I don't do this every single day. So just getting the equipment out was actually pretty like time intensive. So when I added everything together, it was like, it makes zero sense to do this for sunflowers.
I know. Yeah. I
Yeah.
also thought about starting them like for our early ones.
It's like,
But
how many are you going to start? Like
again,
100? Like,
well, that's the thing is like if I was starting like 100's just not helpful. Like our farmers market is so big that I'm like 100's not we need more than that. So it just doesn't make sense for us to start them inside, especially from a cost perspective. Like a single stem sunflower, I'm not starting it inside.
yeah. And for context, I mean, Jordan was like, I want 500 a week. So,
Yes,
yeah, I
that's
mean,
my
I
goal.
guess you could do 500 in cell trays, but then you have to transplant them out, which is also a lot of work.
So this might be a good transition of why do I want 500 a week?
Mm,
If we want to kind of shift over to like
yeah.
other like things we're gambling on.
Yes.
So the other thing that I am gambling on this year is trying out a new sales strategy for our farmers market. So the reason I want 500 sunflowers a week is that we are really going to lean into sunflowers this year and lilies for the farmers market. So I think I grew like one lily last year. Um, like just had them in my home garden. And this year, let's just say I have a lot more than one growing. So we're getting lilies every 2 weeks. We're getting a crate of them and planting them out. One of the things that we dealt with at the farmers market last year is that in the spring, it's awesome. We have 4 flower vendors. We're all selling out. Everyone's fantastic growers. Everyone has beautiful flowers. It's awesome. We can charge very good prices. We're in like a wealthier area, I would say, for our farmers market. So, we're doing like $35 jars, $20 to $25 wraps, $15 like little jars, like that size. Um, So we're doing that at the farmers market. But then once summer comes and you have all the vegetable farmers that you're competing with, they're charging $15. They have these gigantic wraps and of like zinnias and sunflowers. And I think that last year I had in my head that, well, you can't be making a profit selling, at that price. But I think as I've like gone through winter and I've done my spreadsheets and we've talked and I've really thought on it, is like, I think I kind of have to come off of my high horse a little bit. And I really have to think about like, what can we bring to the farmers market that allows us to compete, right? Because I'm not trying to like compete and like push the price down or race to the bottom. Like that's not the strategy, but like I want to offer a product that is at least similar in it can't just be similar in price. It's got to be similar visually as well, kind of. But like in size. And so I think our strategy for this year is going to be sunflower and lily bouquets in the summertime. And I think that we can get to a healthy profit margin with that. But our strategy is definitely going to be to reduce our price in the summertime and bring a larger volume of bouquets to the market.
Ooh,
So that's our new sales strategy that we're trying. So
I
lower
have
price, higher volume.
questions, Jordan. Because
Okay, let's
so
hear.
so for those of you who didn't hear our last live, it's called Essential Tips for Selling at a Farmer's Market. Jordan talked a lot about her prior experience. So the questions I'm going to ask actually come from the conversation that we had there. So I believe last time you said that there was a $5 differential between what you were selling last year at the height of summer and what these veggie farmers were selling. So are you planning on selling $15 or are you planning on really bulking? Oh, okay. So you're going to go down to the $15 price point. Have you like, so what
I am.
fillers are you going to put in there for sunflowers and lilies?
It's a really good question. Actually, don't have a plan on that yet.
Well, you have a
I
ton
don't
of
know.
mint in the ground,
Um,
right?
no. So it was in the greenhouse during the polar vortex
Oh no.
and it
No.
didn't make it. I know. I'm so sad about it. But I'm going to order another tray and put it in. But I want to put it in a raised bed, so I'm waiting on that because I just had the gravel area on like the left side of our greenhouse finished, and I'm going to put a couple raised beds over there, but it's mostly just going to be seating. But once I have those raised beds in, I'm going to do the mint over there. Um, so it's a good question. I feel like I have an answer for future years, but I don't know what I'm doing for this year. So I do still need to kind of think through that and figure it out. For future years, we are going to have like woody shrubs as our foliage. So we are investing in woodies this year. We'll also have
I'm just
perennials, but
laughing because when Jordan says we're investing in them, like she is investing in them. When
investing,
she
yes.
shows me her order sheets, I'm like, are you planning an orchard of like woodies?
I am. Uh, but yeah, we have one whole like woody field planned. And really, I think that that came out of taking the Lily workshop was kind of really where that idea spurred from is watching when they're making their
Yes.
market bouquets in that and they're using all of those as their fillers. And one of the things that I always like to think about, I think from a like labor perspective is like, does it make sense for me to continue to plant like annual foliages every year, or does it make more sense for me to, one time or a couple of times, it just depends on how long those plants last for, to put those in and have them last for like, 10 to 15 years and only have to do that planting one time and then you're just maintaining it in future years. And with woodies, it's easy, you're taking a hedge trimmer and you're going and I don't know if y'all have watched that Sunflower Steve video, but it's definitely a much quicker process than having to like seed out an entire field every single year. So I don't know this year what we're going to use for foliage, but I do know what we'll use in future years. I
Yeah.
got to figure it out for this year. I wanted to have cress, like penny
Mhm.
cress, and I'll just be honest, I have been so busy that we have not had time to plant it. So that's why my answer is I don't know because it was going to be penny cress and I still haven't seeded it.
Got
I
it.
think I still have time.
I think you still have time too. And I was nodding my head furiously when she was talking about the perennial piece because so by the way, guys, these lives are actually getting translated into podcast form if in case if you miss them, just because like they're over an hour long usually. So I think it's just easier to have them in audio format where your screen isn't on all the time. So for all those podcasts viewers or listeners out there, I was nodding my head furiously because I think one of the most valuable takeaways for me when I took the Lily workshop was at the end, they have this piece around just how do you make market bouquets, mix
Mhm.
bouquets with lilies. And so Emily Von Trapp is one of the instructors, and she has a very established perennial garden that like her dad basically put in. So we're talking about decades old. And I think there were two things that stood out to me. One, obviously, she doesn't have to replant them every single year because they are so established. But two, the amount or the lack of quantity of stems she needed to put
Ooh,
in to achieve
yeah,
a really full looking bouquet. I mean, she had
beautiful.
like five stems, and that bouquet was like, I mean, I thought you could sell it for
So
like
pretty.
$25 minimum.
I know.
So yeah, that got my wheels turning, even though I haven't had the chance to put in perennials yet. Like we have a really bad deer problem where they're eating my boxwoods, like stuff that they shouldn't be eating. So we have to think about like a much better way to protect the stuff that we put in. But if it weren't for that, I would have put in a ton of the perennials that she was listing on there already, because it just looked so easy to make the mixed bouquets. And honestly, like it also feels like there's less pest pressure when it comes
Mhm.
to perennials. So
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
yeah.
But that's our plan for this year. So, and that's not what we'll do in the spring. In the spring, we'll, still do our typical. And I still think that I think the difference was there was only a $5 price point from where I was at last year and where they were at. But it wasn't just price that you have to compete on. You've got to compete on that visual as well. And so where we ran into an issue is 5 dahlia stems at $20 looks very different than like 10 zinnias and 5 sunflowers that they're doing in these massive bouquets for $15. So I want to, and last year I was like not going to try to compete on it, but I think if I'm going to be sitting at the market and I'm spending my labor to be sitting there, then I should have a product that I can at least somewhat try to compete on. And ours is going to be good quality, florist quality flowers. But if we're going to spend the time and we love being at the market, because we do, we've got to find a product that we can compete with.
So going back to the dahlias, will you still be selling dahlias at the farmers market?
Um,
To be determined, it sounds like.
I don't know. I feel like I would have like strongly told you no. Um, Up until like this morning, I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, well, maybe we could offer like a $35 option.
I I don't think
But
that's
it's going
a
to
bad
be
idea.
very pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I hadn't really thought. I don't know why, because we always talk about this, like having our multiple price points, but I hadn't really thought about it for the summer in the market. And just because honestly, I don't think it'll sell.
Mm.
Just knowing what I learned last year. So I need to think through it still. It's definitely, I would have told you a hard no up until this morning, but for some reason today, I was like, maybe be a higher priced option, but I don't know.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I think that you and I are those two people where we'll have a plan at the end of the season, and then that crop plan will continue to evolve. Like mine is
Yes.
continuing to evolve. Like I am still trying to decide when my Lysianthus plugs come in 3 weeks, am I actually going to put them in? Because I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
why? Like why am I growing in the month of July and August? It's because I had ordered Lysianthus plugs before I decided I didn't want to grow then,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, yeah. So I'm also going through that too right now, and I feel like that's okay. Like that's a part of running a business. Like the ability to make quick and informed decisions is really important for your business to be sustainable, because you shouldn't continue forward with a decision because of perceived sunk cost. So in this case, my sunk cost
Mm-hmm.
would be I order the plugs. They're expensive. But it's not like I can't give away the plugs, resell the plugs, or whatever it is, right? So I think that sometimes the limitations that we place on ourselves are limitations that we place on ourselves and are not like true
Yeah.
limitations. So but there's actually a few more questions in the chat. So, where's the Sunflower Steve video located? Yeah, because he doesn't have a YouTube channel, right?
No, I'm trying to think. It's probably on Nicole's channel. So
Mm.
I'm trying to think what
Flower
they're
Hill
even
Farm,
talking
Nicole.
about, but he shows, yes, sorry, yeah, Flower Hill Farm. He shows himself cutting down hydrangeas and he's like, has his like hedge trimmer out there and he just like goes to town on it. So I think it might be maybe her like hydrangea planting. I don't know. If you look for it,
It's out there
it's out there.
somewhere. I'm sure if you Google Sunflower Steve, it might pop up.
Yeah.
Someone said they're trying a trap crop type of solution for deer planted about half a football field of clover away from our flowers. So I'm curious to see if that
Okay.
works for you. I will say that our grass, so I have 3 acres and I only grow in a fenced in area 40 by 90 feet. Our like unfenced area is actually a lot of clover. And the deer still want to eat stuff that they're not supposed to eat. So, but do let me know if that works for you because maybe it's a different kind of clover that you're planting than the naturalized ones that we have out here. The other thing with clover with us is that where I am, thrips actually overwinter in clover
Mhm.
and they're not going to die now because our winters are just not mild enough. So, we like clover is one of those weeds that can flower even if there's like a centimeter a stem on there. Like
Mm,
it's insane how
yeah.
quickly they can flower. So my husband will literally mow one day and then like 12 hours later, like I'll start seeing buds of flowers. And so it's just like that's where the thrips are. So because I had such a big thrips problem last year, I was really conscious about all the clover that I had. And so I guess if I had to pick my poison, I would pick the deer over the thrips. But
I
that's
was
a big
telling
other
Jesse
side
last
tangent.
night when I left the farm that there were 9 deer just running in the field. I'm like, guys, come on, leave me alone.
Yes, yes. So all right, but back to gambles. So that is, I'm so curious to see how it plays out, Jordan. I think that like sunflowers are totally going to do well, especially once you put them into a mixed bouquet. And then the last thing on that topic is I'm assuming that the veggie farmers competing at that $15 price point are not putting in lilies, right?
No, yeah, it's zinnias and then like really gigantic sunflowers.
Yeah. And you'll probably put what, like just 1 or 2 stems max of lilies in a $15 bouquet?
Yeah, probably like 2. I have it in a spreadsheet
Yeah.
somewhere, what my plan is. I think it's maybe 2, of, like, the LA hybrids and
Yeah.
then, a couple of sunflowers and then, like, 2 stems of greenery, depending on what that ends up being.
Yeah.
TBD.
So that's probably a good transition to me talking about lilies and the
Mhm.
gamble that I'm taking on lilies for 2024. And that gamble is twofolded. So last year I took the Lily workshop. So that's for Miss Alex M. I'm going to try to avoid typing because the sound last time was pretty bad. But it's the Lily workshop. So if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And I really double down, or I guess I went all in on lilies for me. They were my second biggest crop. This year, I'm going even bigger. The limitation with growing lilies, though, is that it's hard to find suppliers that are going to send you reasonably priced bulbs in quantities
Mhm.
that you need. Like, I'm not looking to buy necessarily like 10 or 25, but I would love to have like 50 to 100 for a single succession. But if you want to buy wholesale, a whole crate is anywhere from like 300 to 400 bulbs. For like the sizes that we use for our LA hybrids, they're 400.
Mhm.
And on my scale, like that's too much. Like, but Jordan, I'm assuming you're doing the 400 crates per single
Yeah, we're
variety.
doing the 400. We're doing the 400 when it's the LA hybrids, and then on rose lilies, I wanna say,
They're like 300.
what is Zabo's? Because
It
that's who we're using. Is it
it's usually
300 or
like
250?
300 unless if you're buying like
300?
a really
Yeah,
big bulb. But
we're
the
not.
point is that
So
like I mean
300.
that tells you the difference between Jordan's scale and my scale. Like I'm not doing a lot of retail and lilies are not necessarily the star for florists, right? So I have to be really careful about how many lilies I plant, but I really see there being like a huge demand for them. And even though I'm not doing a ton of retail, like I'm still going to sell at this local country store. And I think that lilies paired with sunflowers, like you, Jordan, is going to be
Mhm.
really, really good. So the other way that I've doubled down on lilies is that I've really leaned into as a whole reselling bulbs. So this started out with ranunculus corms when I wanted to get wholesale pricing but couldn't grow wholesale quantity. So I started reselling them. Then that went well. So I replicated that with tulips. So that's how I was able to grow like 30 varieties of tulips this winter because I didn't do 30 times 500 or 15,000. So I resold those and they did well. And then I was like, let me do that with lilies. And I feel like with all of the things that I've resold so far, lilies have the biggest gap in the sense that a lot of people do
Mhm.
want to grow lilies, but they have a hard time, of course, finding these like reasonably priced bulbs. So I'm going to put a plug in. I have about 8 successions of lily bulbs that I already have on my website. If anyone is interested in growing lilies, you can buy them on my website. I'll put that in the show notes below. But it's bearflowerfarm.com. If you go to shop, you'll see it. The point is that So I'm upfronting a lot of money in terms of buying crates of lilies in single varieties and then betting on the fact that I can actually resell them and then keeping anywhere from 50 to 100 for myself. So for week 12 lilies, or sorry, week 10 lilies, I'm like 75% sold out. So it really told me like there is a demand for this. So the investment on the bulb side makes sense, but it also allows me to trial the different kinds of varieties and see what customers like from a consumer perspective. So yeah, that's been
What are you,
yeah.
so from last year to this year, how many did you grow last year and what's your plan for this year?
I grew 2,000 for last year in terms of lilies. And the way that I grew 2,000 was I bought the mixed crates. So
Hmm.
Onins offers mixed crates of lily bulbs. And I've grown both Oriental trumpet hybrids. They have fragrance. And I've also grown LA hybrids. Longiflorum Asiatic is the full name. Those are non-fragrant. And the LA hybrids typically do a lot better because they're non-fragrant. And the lily
Hmm.
fragrance can be very polarizing. So this year, I don't even know how many crates I ordered, but I mean, my lily bulb order right now is about $4,000 worth, which is like
Is a lot of lilies.
that's a lot of lilies, and that only goes up to July. So I haven't even planned the second half of year secessions. Like I really like went all in
Yeah.
with this because I've got lilies, I've got ranunculus corms, so I'm gonna be selling Italian corms this year as well as tulips. Like all in, I'm like at least the cash flow is not immediate, but it's about like $15,000 worth of product that I have to cash flow upfront and have the confidence that I can sell it later, right? Like that's not an insignificant amount of money. And my goal this
Yeah.
year is to not have to loan myself or the business money. Like all of it is
Hmm.
going to come from Bear Flower Farm. So like it's nice
There you
heading
go.
into year 3 that my bank account is starting with 5 digits in there. So I know I can
Yeah.
confidently pay for some of these bulbs. But, getting to that 5 digit number was really sitting back and reflecting on like what has really worked well for my business. And at the end of the day, like even though I started out with this intention of growing and I always will grow, like really leaning into the bulb resale piece of it, like help accelerate getting me there. And it also provides obviously more opportunities for me to grow and experiment, which you guys are going to see more in my YouTube videos. So, like, it affords me the opportunity to take stupid risks and do things that no one has
Hmm.
done before because I can risk losing that crop essentially.
Yeah. And I think people need to be okay with pivoting. Like what you start out doing may not be what you end up like leaning in on once you're like further down in your business. There might be like I don't think you had any idea that you would go the bulb route when you originally started. You just thought you were going to be growing. And so I
Oh,
think it's okay.
yeah.
And I think people need to give themselves permission to like change course if they find out that something is working better for their business, right? Because bulbs have been extremely successful for you. Do
Yeah.
you think that you'll add any other bulbs? So you have ranunculus that you do now and lilies. Do you think you'll add any others in the future?
I'm gonna trial callas this year. So they're a type of
Ooh,
lily, but they're
talked about that.
callas are really, really expensive.
Good.
Um,
Ah.
yeah, but they are actually pretty sought after by florists. So I'm
Mm.
trialing that. I don't really count that as like a completely new crop because they are in the lily family, even though they're different.
You know how many you're
Um,
trialing?
I think I have 3 secessions, and each one is about like 125 bulbs.
What colors are you
125
doing?
cala bulbs, by the way, each one
Oh,
produces like
expensive.
7 to 10 stems. So it's actually like a lot of stems. I don't need 125.
Mm,
It doesn't sound like a
okay.
lot, but it's a lot. And that's why when I resell cala bulbs, I'm reselling them in quantities of 10 and 25 because I think for the common person, like 10 is probably enough. Um,
What colors are you growing? What are
uh,
you trialing?
I'm growing Picasso and Denver. So, like, I think Picasso is the one that's like purple white, and Denver's like
Mhm.
more pink. So I picked those
Mm.
because I obviously work with event florists, and I think that those would do really, really well for wedding work, essentially.
Do your florists like purple?
They do.
Oh, ours don't.
Oh,
Interesting. Yeah. I
Well, it
mean, if it's
also
like a
depends on time
very
of year,
light,
right? Yeah, like
yeah.
they buy a lot of lavender, especially like
Hmm.
this upcoming next couple of months.
That's true.
And then when it turns fall, like people do actually start switching over to burgundy and fall
Hmm.
palette vibes. So like that's when orange can actually sell really well
Yeah.
to florists.
So
But
anything other than callas or just callas?
so I was talking to my grower friend Jess, and she was
Hmm.
like, gladiolus. And I was like, funny you mentioned that. I might
That's what I was
try.
gonna ask.
I might
Okay.
try. So there's a supplier that I think is finally doing like a little bit smaller quantities. So I'll look into it. And I think that Glads could do well. Like they obviously can do well retail, but I think they could
Mhm.
also do well event work because obviously they're very like tall, right? So for centerpieces, and they come in some really good colors that are versatile for retail and event work, like peach, right? And like the
Mhm.
cream colors. So
And
she
if you
my
have
girlfriend, oh sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you have florists that are doing like hotel work, a lot of our or some of ours do hotel work, they're always looking for something that is like tall and dramatic for those like hotel displays.
Yes.
Which is more like week because they're taking arrangements like weekly to hotels. So, and honestly, glads are used a lot for like funeral work, which is something that happens
I
regularly.
didn't even know
So,
that.
yeah, they are. So I went in and talked with like one of the retail florists, and like lilies and glads are used a lot for that. So
Oh,
that's another area that you can consider of like, you know, glads are something you can secession. So, you can bring them in, secession them. There's I think Edney has like a mix that's fairly low price. So
yeah.
that's what we did last
Yeah, that's interesting because like just thinking about like not this year, but 2025,
year.
because
Hmm.
of the role that bulbs and the ability to have like a programmable focal basically close to any time you want and not have gaps, that has become such a huge advantage and selling point for me personally that I was thinking that maybe like that's what I focus on, but then focus on filler. In
Hmm.
terms of like greenery filler and spray
Mm,
like filler, because you guys know I love yarrow and I want to grow all the yarrow in the
me
world.
too.
But obviously, yarrow only blooms like, like once in June and then maybe you'll get a second flush, right? But it's really made me reconsider. This year I'm going to be growing a lot of zinnias because I really want to try all the floret ones, but eventually want to get to a place where I'm kind of growing like celosia and some other greens because at the end of the day, like my cooperative, we do sell greens, but we don't sell that many greens in the grand scheme. I think that there's a lot more focus on the focals, and that's
Hmm.
really, really great. But I think I can probably add more value by growing something that's not a focal for all of our florists at the co op.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm actually kind of the exact opposite. Like any of like the foliage and fillers, we're growing strictly for us for retail. And then focals are what we're growing for florist because we just find that our florists in our area are really not using a whole lot of foliage and filler. They're really using focal. And they have like when I've talked with them, they specifically asked like we struggle to get focals locally, and that is what we would like. Um, just because they need a large volume of them. So that's
Yep.
what they've asked us to kind of focus on.
Yeah, for sure. So there's the chat's been humming here. Melanie, yes, Fred Nagel, that's the one that I'm gonna check out. I saw Krista had a question. Thank you so much, Candace, for answering that. So for anyone who's not aware, in the flower farming world, typically when you order bulbs, the supplier is gonna ask you what week do you want them. So there's 52 weeks in a year, and you can order them on like week 10, week 13, week 27, right? So it's the week that corresponds to usually like the start of that week in a given year. And you can Google like what is week 10 uh,
Yeah.
in 2024, and then Google will spit out that date for you. But that's really
There's
what it means.
also a setting on your iPhone that you
Hmm,
can switch to where it'll add the week to your calendar.
I did not know that. That is really good to
So,
know because I have a Google
yeah, so
spreadsheet where I have all the
I
weeks.
can
So, oh
do
my
that,
God,
but it has the weeks listed over here.
no way.
I can't remember how I did it, but you can Google it and then you can add it that way. That way it's just on your phone.
What a good tip. I love that one because I'm always like referencing the weeks. So I always know the weeks that passed, but not necessarily the weeks that are going forward.
They're like
Um,
week 1 and week 52. That's it, guys.
Exactly, exactly. And so, just like very quickly for people who are unaware, but the reason why they'll ask you for the week is because when we say that these bulbs are programmable, it means that people have been, or the distributors are faking winter for them. So they're basically freezing the bulbs. And then before they ship them to you, they take them out of the freezer, and then you are able to basically succession plant bulbs whenever you want. So I think there are some people who try to refrigerate bulbs. I haven't done it personally. I've been warned against it. I think that you might be able to do it for a couple of weeks, but to like truly succession plant, you're not going to be able to buy like a crate of 400 lilies and spread it out over like 2, 3 months, right? You might be able to spread it out over like a month at the most.
I
So
have heard that you can like if you have like a giant cooler. I do not, but if you did, that you could like go ahead and get them in the crate, put them in
yes,
the soil, and then slide them into the cooler if for like a week or two. If you just want to, if you get a crate of 400 and you want to plant 200 and then like slide the other two crates or the other
yeah,
200 into the cooler, but they need to like be planted already.
yes, which I don't have a cooler either. So,
I don't have one.
um,
Yeah. I mean,
but
we have a cooler, but not a giant cooler.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So there's actually one more topic that I want to talk about. So for me personally, I think 2024, like still going to focus on growing, but in the process of trying to scale this e-commerce side with the bulbs, I've really taken a step back and said to myself, like, what are the things that I'm not good at, that I don't enjoy, and that I really need to get my act together on? And one of them was bookkeeping. So I've been talking to a particular bookkeeper, and that person's now looking over my QuickBooks, which I warned them. I was like, I've tried to be very detailed, but I don't even know if I'm doing it right. Like, I would like to make sure that my chart of accounts looks good to you, and the stuff that I'm depreciating is like aligned to what you think would be the best. Because even though we have a real tax accountant for our personal taxes, that person doesn't do my business taxes. So I give him a schedule C or a schedule F. He inputs it, but the data that goes
Mhm.
into your schedule C or schedule F is actually kind of important. So that's what that bookkeeper would be working on. And even though I don't spend like an obscene amount of time on bookkeeping, I think that that is a peace of mind, but also it just feels like, yeah, like I'm really running a business, right? So the counting needs to be there.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Yeah,
Yeah.
agree with that.
And then the one other thing that I am also doing is I've been in talks with a graphic designer to potentially do some rebranding. And this is not something that I would normally do like in year three. So for my soap business, I waited like a good 5 years before I actually hired a professional designer. I was on 99 Designs for that. And back then I felt like there was a little bit more flexibility around pricing and stuff. Since then, Vistaprint has acquired them. So the pricing is kind of the same, but I feel like what you get out of it is a little bit less than what I had before. But anyway, so the point is, I paid like low four figures for a branding design for my soap company, and that logo got carried over more or less for Bear Flower Farm. I edited a little bit, but because I am now doing content creation with the podcast, the e-commerce, and the growing, I wanted to like re-look at what that branding looked like. And so it felt like that would be like a suitable investment for me. And I'm expecting that that's going to cost me like at least $2,000. So that is not a
Mm.
small investment, but I always think that branding is super, super important, not just for your customers, but honestly also for like ourselves, like to take ourselves seriously.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it does help you take yourself more seriously. We also used 99 Designs when we did ours at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you like 99 Designs?
I did. I like how ours turned out. I liked I mean, it was just a lot of iterations to get to the point of you actually liking something, and you'll like think you like one thing and then someone else submits something and you're like, oh no, I like that better. So it was, I mean, I felt like it took forever, but eventually I liked where we got. And I like it because we have like our full logo, but then we also have like a separate just like standalone like J with a flower that matches our logo, so I can kind of go in between of whichever I want to use when we're branding. So
Yeah. So like the cool thing about 99 Design is that it's like crowdsourcing from different
mhm.
designers. So there's different tiers, and for anyone who's interested in updating their logo and getting like a professional designer, you want to pay up for a higher package because typically
Yeah.
you get the better designers in that higher package. But that being said, I feel like nowadays the prices on 99 Design are they're high enough to be comparable to hiring a normal local graphic designer. And
Yeah,
then look, honestly, you also have Canva now, right? Where you can throw together a
seriously.
really nice logo. I think that to graduate beyond something like a Canva is when you really want like cohesiveness between things and like a strategy mindset in terms of branding that you obviously can't get with something like Canva.
Tricky about using Canva, or just something I noticed lately is like I think some logo designs are very popular. And so now I've noticed that like several people, and it's like several people locally have the same exact logo, but just like a different like
Different name.
company name. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. So you got to think they've got to all probably be using Canva for it, and that's how that's happening. But so
Yeah,
yeah, just
that's so interesting because then obviously like you start confusing businesses
yeah.
with one another. So,
Someone like pointed it out in the chat on or on the comment section on Facebook, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, like they have it." And then there I found like another business that had it. I'm like, "Oh, this is weird." So
yeah.
that's got to be what's happening is they're all using Canva.
Yep. So, yes, I see your comment here, Candace, on the accounting stuff. I'll see how we can potentially make that into a video, but we're nearing the 1 hour mark. Jordan, anything else you want to add to the gambles that we're taking?
No, I think that that is all of mine. Early sunflowers, farmers market strategy, and then shifting to on-farm sales. Our
Yeah.
goal is 50% for our on-farm sales last year when, it was zero. Or for this year, my goal is 50% on-farm sales, and last year obviously it was zero. So
Yeah, and I feel
it'll be
like
interesting to see.
you're gonna be off to a pretty good start with all of the tulips that you have in. The one other thing for me is I touched upon this. I'm gonna be growing a ton of zinnias. In fact, I thought about converting my field to basically a floret field for the
Oh, I
summer.
love
And
that.
that is really risky because of my experience growing zinnias, the powdery mildew that we get. And honestly, like I feel like zinnias can be pretty labor intensive because
Hmm.
if the disease comes quickly enough, right, then obviously like you've got a really succession plant, and I would be obviously starting those seeds. It's not like I can order plugs of floret
Yes.
zinnias, but that one is like that's a gamble financially, but that's also like a fun risk for me to take. Like I'm curious to see how those are going to turn out, right? So it's a financial risk that I'm willing to take, and I'll still have my lilies. I'll still have some of the
Hmm.
stuff that I know I'll have to sell wholesale at the cooperative, but I always like I don't know. I like having some stuff that's more for me and it's less financially motivated. And again, I'm able to do this stuff because I have other pieces of, we'll call it income streams for Bear Flower Farm that cushion the failure should I fail. But I also think that if people can see how I do with floret seeds, it might also help other people too, right? So we
Make a
are
decision.
starting
Yeah.
to get into this point where sometimes my crop planning might actually be influenced by the content I put out there. I don't think I'm ever going to plant things that I'm not ever going to sell, but
Hmm.
I might actually double down on something that I'd be less willing to do if I didn't have that financial cushion.
Yeah,
So,
that absolutely makes sense. I think that would be so fun if you did like a floret field for the summer. I
yeah.
like it. But I get the like risk around it though, because none of us have grown zinnias before. We don't know how they're gonna do. We don't know how disease resistant they are.
And we don't know
Especially
how they're
since
going
you
to
and
do in
I
different climates, right? That's the other
that's
thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm still also trying to figure out where on our farm where our floret varieties are going to go because obviously like when we originally made our field plan, we didn't know that those were going to get released this year. So I actually haven't dropped them into my field plan yet because I don't know if we've talked about this, but our field plan was no zinnias this year.
Mhm.
I was going to completely remove them, and obviously now that Floret released them, we're adding them back into our field plan now. But I'm still just kind of trying to wrap my head around it. Like, the, I feel like I need to give myself like one more year of growing zinnias. I feel like I wanted to like write them off because they did so bad last year. But I feel like maybe I give myself one more year of trying to see if I can make them work on our farm. But I don't know. Haven't really figured that out yet.
Yeah. I
Be
mean, look, our
interesting.
plans will probably still change as we progress throughout the year. And then next to the zinnias, so it actually can't be a full field of zinnias because the other thing that I'm really going to be trialing this year is fall planted varieties of things that we normally plant for in the spring. So like ranunculus will be one of them, even like sweet peas. I have a bunch of sweet pea seeds that I'm just like, I'm not going to grow them in the spring because they will never be as good as the peas in the hoop houses. Again, like very small financial investment. I didn't buy a ton of sweet peas, but it'd be nice if I had some bunches to sell. And I think I have a
Hmm.
better chance of achieving that potentially in the fall. But of course, that all is dependent on my ability to time things correctly. So that's where the experimental piece
You
comes in, right?
have.
Because I know it can be done. It's just for your particular growing conditions and environment, you got to figure out the timing for it to work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you is do you have like a firm plan of here's what you're going to try
So
timing wise?
I feel like for ranunculus, I do, and
Hmm.
it's partially because a group of us came together last summer to actually talk with Hank from Ownings about fall planter ranunculus, and he shared some stuff that was like just like really interesting and informative from a scientific perspective. And the key thing that he said about ranunculus was that in the seedling phase they actually have a higher tolerance for higher temperatures. So you know how like they say that the corms start going dormant above like 65, 70 degrees when the soil temperature
Hmm.
is consistently there for like a few days. When it comes to seedlings, they actually can weather that. So what that means is that for like my climate, I should actually be selling or starting corms sometime in like late July, like early August type of time frame, and then they go into the ground. So I just have to figure out how to sprout them inside, which shouldn't be that hard because the inner zone or inside is cooler than outside. And then
Hmm.
once that's done, then I put them outside under shade cloth. And then hypothetically, as the weather cools, it will be totally conducive for them for the fall. But there were a couple of farmers who trialed this up in the Northeast, so like Vermont, Maine, and they had great success. So I think it's totally doable. Again, it's just a matter of figuring out timing. I'd actually love to also do the same with stock, with snaps, but I just need to figure out from a space perspective if that's something that we can do. Like I did do it with snaps. I got a second flush out of my Potomac, but the
Hmm.
problem was we had a relatively earlier frost and that didn't necessarily kill the plants, but it stunted them. So what I
Mm.
found with fall blooming snaps in my zone is that there is that risk that once you start it's not even like the reduction of the daylight hours. I think it's a combination of the reduction of daylight hours plus the really cold temperature. You might start seeing buds, but they just never get to that point of like they're actually going to open and bloom for you. So I probably only got about a quarter of the flush of plants that I was expecting to get.
Mm. Okay.
So so yeah,
Well, I can't wait to see how
lots
the
to come
ranunculus
for
goes.
fall, hopefully. But
I'm excited.
yeah, so we are a few minutes over, but thank you everyone for joining. Lots of really good engagement in the chats here. We saw that there was quite a bit of interest in terms of farming with children. So that is a video that Jordan and I do plan on tackling. And I think that it's really unique for us because obviously I have a very young child and Jordan has a range of kids. I think the only kids that we're missing are like the range of like 5 to like 10
Yeah.
years old, right? Which is
Yep.
actually a really different age group than the kids that
Than
we
what we
have,
have.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a lot more willing to agree to you, I feel,
To
in that
help.
age group. Yes. So we'll talk more about that, but have a great weekend, everyone. And Jordan, as usual, thanks so much for your generous time and good luck today.
Thank you.
All right, bye
Talk to you later.
everyone.
Bye.
Okay, so we got 84 people. Is that right?